Welcome to the I Get Better podcast with your hosts, Charlene Renee and Phaedra Smith, where we discuss topics related to life, love, mental, physical, and spiritual health, and how we can all get better together.
So welcome back to I Get Better. Today's topic of the day is I get better when I forgive.
So forgiveness, what do you think forgiveness means?
For me, forgiveness is letting go of something that someone has done to me that was an offense, a wrong, an act that I found to be hurtful. So basically just letting them off and not being upset with them about it, letting it go, not bringing it up, not holding it against them any longer.
That's easier said than done, but yes, I agree.
Definitely. But the Webster dictionary version of forgiveness is to cease to feel resentment against an offender or to grant relief from payment of, so like forgiving a debt. So cease to feel resentment against. I think that is a very good point I want to come back to later on.
I think the key part is we have to forgive when we are feeling some type of way. That is very hard. And I think a lot of people, especially like, I don't know about you, but like just growing up in church, you talk about forgiveness and you're just expected to forgive and let go. That does not happen overnight. For me, it didn't. And sometimes I'm still harsh on myself. I'm like, man, why I'm still feeling some type of way about this? But really letting go of feelings of hurt, of pain, that takes time. Just like the natural, like the physical body takes time to heal from an injury. We have to have the same sort of grace for our feelings. And I don't think sometimes we look at it that way.
No, and I think it's not always hard to do. It just depends on the nature of the offense, the severity of it, the person who's doing the offense to you. I think all of those factors come into play when it determines if it's going to be difficult or easy to forgive. Like if someone accidentally steps on my shoe and they say, oh, I'm sorry. It's very easy to forgive something like that, even if it hurt a little bit, or if it's just someone, they did it on accident, and it's someone you don't really know. You're not usually going to pop off at them. I mean, most people won't. Some people get very offended at little things, but typically someone doing something to you that you see as a small thing, you more readily forgive versus something you take to heart or some big offense or something you determine as a big offense. It takes a little bit longer, a little bit more work to forgive them for that.
You made a good point at what you define as big or small, because you and I could be in the same situation and the same thing happened to us and I might fly off the handle, but you might not think it's a big deal. And I think a lot of that really is determined by my history. So I might be more sensitive to a certain thing if I have a history behind it and it's linked to other things. So it might be harder for me to forgive one thing versus another person. It might be very easy for them to forgive for that same kind of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely different for everyone, but I think everyone has things that they need to forgive in order to move forward, in order to be mentally healthy and physically healthy and strong. We should be getting better at forgiveness and grace.
So I have an interesting question for you then. So let's talk about forgiveness in the matter of like a couple. A husband or a wife, boyfriend or a girlfriend, you dating, and you're trying to forgive. It's a lot easier, I think, sometimes to forgive someone when you don't have to be around them all the time versus somebody that you seeing every day. How do you work through forgiveness with someone that is so close to you? Because sometimes you think that's the easiest thing to do, but it's not. Like a lot of times couples end up walking around with resentment and hurt and pain because that person, you see them every day, and for you, they aren't changing. So how do you work through that?
Girl, that could be a whole nother show in and of itself, but let's just touch on it briefly here in this session. As far as in a couple relationship, I think that's where it becomes even more difficult to forgive. That's where we circle back to, it depends on who is doing the offense.
Right.
And also the severity of the offense, because unforgiveness, I think, runs rampant in close relationships, whether it's a couple or a family member or a close friendship. But coming back to the couple portion of it, the question, it's difficult to forgive in a marriage or relationship, romantic relationship, because you expect this person not to hurt you.
Right.
You expect them to treat you a certain way because they love you and you love them. So your expectations and the standards you hold them to are very high, and we don't give them as much grace because we've given them something. We've given them ourselves. We've given them our vulnerability. We've opened up to them. We've disclosed our deepest secrets and everything to this person. So I've given you this, and I'm trusting that you won't hurt me and you won't break that gift that I've given to you. So when you do mess up, now I'm looking at you some type of way, and I'm feeling some type of way, and I just want to let it go.
But should I be giving those things freely because I love that person without expectations? Should we have expectations?
I mean, we should give them freely, because what would Jesus do? You know,
He would give them freely.
He forgave us, you know. So He expects us to forgive, and this is the person we say we love and we are closest to and want to be with, and we want to be happy with them. So yes, we should forgive them. Now, the how that's done is a different subject or a different dynamic of the conversation. But yes, we should forgive them. It just isn't as easy as, it's easier said than done.
When we talk about expectations, sometimes forgiveness is a lot easier when you adjust your expectations of people. And I don't know how to be in any type of relationship, even if it's a friendship, without some sort of expectations. That's just a natural thing, I feel like, to do, like a standard. And I don't know that I can talk about with people that, like, maybe you shouldn't have expectations for people. Maybe you should just accept them for who they are. But that's a very hard thing to do when you are, like, in a close relationship with someone. I mean, you have the expectations for them to treat you fairly, at least. But even just adjusting your expectations and like kind of looking within and saying, like, am I holding them to this standard that isn't fair? And like, sometimes that's an easy way to start to get to forgiveness.
Yes, you made a good point. It's not that you shouldn't have expectations of how people should treat you and not have standards. You most definitely should. It's you, when you said you should alter your expectations, that's key. Because yes, you should expect this person to treat you right and not to hurt you, not to lie to you, not to steal from you, not to betray you, not to
disrespect
you, or I was looking for trust, break your trust. In those things you should expect, but you also should expect that they will make mistakes. And that's the thing we don't want to put in our expectation list.
Right.
That this person is flawed. I expect you to be a flawed person, and I expect you to make mistakes. Because when you expect something and then it's fulfilled, then you're okay with it. But if I don't expect you to make a mistake and you do, now I have a problem. So we want to expect all the good things from people.
Yeah.
And we don't want to expect the bad things that come from them being human.
Yeah, that's true.
So yes, alter them, but don't say, oh, I shouldn't expect, and I should just take people as they are. I should, take anything anyone wants to give me. Because that's foolishness, and that's really not self-love. That's not healthy for you to just say let people walk all over you just because, oh, that's who they are. Oh, this person is just a liar, so I should just allow them to lie to me all the time because I'm practicing love. You can still practice love and forgiveness, but not be a fool.
I agree.
So expect that people will mess up. And they will do you wrong. And sometimes it is the closest person to you that will do you the most wrong.
Right.
But it's the most wrong because they're close to you. Because people can do the exact same thing, and it's a person who you're close to that you'll get more offended by it. It's the exact same thing. If somebody lies to me and I don't know them very well, I'll be annoyed by it, like, oh, why they lie? Like, that's stupid. Like, you don't have to lie. But if a person I really care about or I'm in a relationship with lies to me, oh yeah, now we got a big problem. You know, I'm not just gonna let that go.
Right.
So it's because it's a close relationship that the offense is turned up a little bit, and now I'm gonna be looking at it like, oh, I can't trust you. Right. And now everything you say, I gotta question. Are you telling the truth, or are you gonna hurt me again?
So you mentioned, I'm just not gonna let that go, which is the exact definition of forgiveness. And
I mean, letting it go doesn't mean you don't address it. Right. You know, it's just not holding on to it long term. So that's where, okay, what's the appropriate time frame to not let something go? You know, a day, a week, a month? You know, when does it become unforgiveness? When does it cross the line from dwelling in that hurt and being hurt for a little bit? You know, allowing yourself to feel sad or feel angry, and then maybe move towards the let go phase. So how much time? Because sometimes people expect you to get over it in an instant. Like, right. I said I was sorry, like, just let it go. No, it was 5 minutes ago that you did this thing. So maybe give me a little time to work my way up to forgiveness of this thing you did. You know, it might take a day or two. So what point does unforgiveness become resentment? And
I think it depends on the crime, like, and then how many times you done committed the crime. I mean, for real, because I might forgive you the first few times, but we've been together for like 5 years now. You still doing the same thing? I'm gonna have some big problems. And
yeah. That's that 70 times 7 times.
Yeah.
That's 70 times 7. I mean, that's a test right there of how far does your forgiveness go? Is there a limit?
It would literally probably, I tell people this because I didn't understand that whole 70 times or whatever. I was like, I don't understand what that means. What is that? And my own definition has been for forgiveness is that I might be deeply wounded by something. I might be suffering a very great loss of a friendship or of a relationship that I've invested in, and I might be really grieving, and I might have some anger and whatever inside. And so for me, like, sometimes it's a daily thing until it's not. It's like me breaking my arm or my shoulder. Like, it's gonna be healed when it's healed, But I think as far as like a emotional injury that requires you to be intentional about forgiving, for me, it's a daily thing to let go daily. Every time that hurt pops up in my heart, to acknowledge it, but then to also say, I'm choosing to let this go today,
Right. It has to be a choice. Forgiveness is a choice. You might not always feel it, when you might be acting it out, even when you really don't feel that forgiveness, and it becomes practice. I'm going to act like everything's okay until it actually is, because it might take longer for the actual feeling to completely go away, to where I can look at this person and that hurt doesn't pop into my head, or I don't want to bring it up anymore. I can think about it and laugh or smile, or just, not have any negative emotion attached to it. Like, man, I'm really over it now. I can really move forward and not treat this person any differently, to actually be able to show them love and actually be kind to them. That's when I've really let this go. And it does take time. It isn't always overnight. And sometimes we never do forgive, because we're human and we're not always going to be perfect at it. But we want to get better at it, because unforgiveness, like deep-rooted unforgiveness, causes us a lot of trouble if we can't get past something. And we thinking that it's helping us is really just a lie that we tell ourselves, because we don't forgive people. It's a choice when we don't forgive people, because we think, if I forgive them, then they've gotten away with this thing. They're gonna think they can do this to me again. They're gonna do it to somebody else. So I'm going to get them back. I'm going to punish them by not forgiving that thing they did. And then hopefully they won't do it to me again.
Well, on the flip side, I've had people that have asked me, they have literally said, I don't know how to forgive. In that case, you have to confront what the issues are. And sometimes you do need to like isolate from that person. Sometimes you might not need to be around that person. Maybe you need to take them off your Facebook for a little while so that you can just like focus on the act of forgiveness, but really confronting what about that situation or that person, that what was it that really hurt me, and then figuring out how to heal from that is really the key to it, because a lot of it is they don't know how to do it. And I can attest to that for my own self at some points in my life where I just was like, I should be over this, but this person was really close to me. So it's very hard for me to get over it.
Well, why should we? Why can't we just hold on to it? I mean, really, say we do just end the relationship and we don't ever, forgive them because we don't know how, we don't want to try, and then we cut them off. What's wrong with that? Why can't we just move on with our lives, not deal with that person anymore? Out of sight, out of mind. Because
I don't think
some people
anything.
do that.
I agree.
We say, bye, Felicia. Like, you're not gonna hurt me again. I'm not gonna allow you to hurt me again, and I'm just gonna hold whatever you did against you, not talk to you anymore, and just go on with my life.
See, that's two different things for me. I think that for my own protection, I have blocked people out of my life, literally and physically. But then the second part of that is to not allow them to take my energy. Because when I'm struggling with unforgiveness, I'm allowing a thing or a person to take the energy that I have away from me because I'm focusing on them. So that's when it becomes like, hey, I can decide to not have you in my life for self-preservation, but also for self-preservation, I can't have you in my thoughts like this. I can't have you draining my energy for yourself. I think that's why that's important. It's important for yourself. You should be doing other things with your passion and your purpose. But when your energy is being drained by this thing or person, there they are again. You physically let it go, but now they're still there mentally.
I mean, in some cases, that is the best thing. But how is that going to affect you down the line with other relationships? If you cut this person off, another person may come into your life and do something else to you and similar things, and at that point you've never had the opportunity to really practice walking out true forgiveness, because yes, you preserved yourself and you protected yourself in that moment, but that doesn't prevent you from being hurt in the future by some other person or some other relationship, and then you're back to where you started, and you might end up cutting off every person in your life that has hurt you in some way in the name of protection. Not to say that sometimes ending a relationship that is totally unhealthy for your spirit, for your physical health, for your mental health, yes, sometimes you do need to do that, but I think those cases should be few and far between.
I agree.
Very limited. I mean, some people, yes, they're toxic and you just cannot continue the relationship. But there's a way of forgiving and not continuing a relationship, I think.
I completely agree. And with some people, you can do that. And some people, you do have to just be like, exit all the way out, all the way to the left, make a right after the stop sign and keep on going past the desert. So.
Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Just go. Yeah, and then I think another barrier too as forgiving is feeling like this person owes you an apology. And if you don't get an apology, then they absolutely do not deserve to be forgiven because they're not sorry about it. They feel no remorse. So why would I forgive them for something they're not even sorry that they did?
That's a very good point, Charlene. And I have something to say about that, because on one hand, some people have mental illnesses that do not allow them to see their faults. You have narcissistic personality disorders, you have borderline, you have these personality disorders where you have, and this is a legit thing, they don't see their fault. And so you the one gonna be walking around, feeling some type of way, and they going on with their life.
Then you gonna be mentally ill.
Yeah, you are.
Because they're making you sick.
Exactly. And in that case, you have to learn how to acceptance, and you have to ask yourself, either I'm gonna accept this person for who they are, or I'm not gonna have this person in my life, because I can't be in a relationship with someone who can't see their faults. And that's okay to make a decision based on that.
And then some people, I don't think it's some, yes, that's true. They do have that actual mental disorder that prevents them from feeling that empathy or being able to take responsibility for their actions. Some people are also defensive. There's something that's happening where they might not have a mental illness, but like they don't want to feel shame and they don't want to feel guilt and they don't want to feel blamed for things. So they're protecting themselves by saying, I did nothing wrong, so that they don't have to feel that hurt and that bad feeling. And that could stem back to something that's happened in their past or their childhood as well that we might not know. And it may not be that they just absolutely aren't capable of feeling remorseful, but they don't want to feel that shame and that guilt, because that's uncomfortable too. Like, to be able to have to admit to yourself that you did something wrong and you hurt somebody, that's a hard pill to swallow as well.
Yeah, tell me about it. I mean, I think a lot of us in relationships can account for that, because especially if your spouse, maybe it's not a mental illness, but maybe like it's just their lifestyle because of their culture or their family environment. That's a very hard thing for the other person on the other side, because now you got to learn how to practice forgiveness without someone handing you that magic pill of an apology. You got to figure out how to move past this without the external thing that makes you feel good.
And one sidebar with the apology note: what about those times when you don't feel the apology is sincere or really heartfelt enough to really be acceptable? Because those times happen too, where someone does apologize and you're like, you're not really sorry. You're like, me to forgive you. You just want me to let you off the hook. You just want me to let it go, and you're not really.
Yeah. You like, don't buy me
sorry.
don't buy me another rose.
Yeah. Okay. I don't want them sorry sad flowers you got at Publix. You trying to you just picked them up on the way home. So now, okay, so absent of an apology, absent of them feeling any remorse, giving forgiveness freely without any change on that person's behalf. How difficult is that to do?
It is very difficult. I think in those cases you got to call a girlfriend because you need to vent and maybe say a few curse words. Maybe you need to go work out, but it's at the end of the day, it's up to you, because somebody can apologize till they blue in the face, but if you're not ready to let it go, number one, then it's not going to matter. Sometimes it really does take time. It takes you saying, I trust that you're going to change, because at this point, I don't really care about an apology. I care about change. That's the most important thing for me. You can apologize every day, but I'm gonna start thinking you crazy if you keep doing the same thing over and over. I'm gonna think you don't mean it.
But is that really freely giving forgiveness and choosing? Because they might not ever change, and you're still holding on to something. You're still saying, you owe me something. You owe me change. Even if you don't give me the apology, you owe me change to make me feel better, to restore me back to where I want to be. And I don't really think that is true forgiveness if we're still saying you owe me something at the end of the day. So getting better at forgiveness means being a bigger person and taking that hit and saying, I've been wronged. This person might not deserve it. They may not apologize. They may apologize and it's not sincere. They may never change and they may hurt me again. But I'm still going to forgive them, because it's not for them, it's for me.
I'm responsible for my own forgiveness. I think that's the key, is we sometimes think that other people are responsible for us forgiving them, but I ultimately am responsible for my own forgiveness. And that's really what it is.
So let's talk about some practical ways to practice forgiveness.
I know for myself, one of the things I have to do is really take it day by day. So if I wake up tomorrow and the things that I felt like I let go of yesterday pop up in the form of like emotions, like we talked about, then I allow myself to feel what I'm feeling, because there is an undercurrent of like grief that sometimes comes along with the forgiveness of people or things. So I allow myself to feel what I'm feeling, and then I just choose to forgive again. A part of it is like, it's a very practical life where you happen to choose to let it go again over and over and over.
So you're saying every day you have to forgive?
Every day, sometimes I have to forgive. Yep. Every day I have to choose to forgive, because I might wake up tomorrow and the feelings of last month might come back, because I might see a person or I might see something that makes me think about it, and those feelings of hurt or anger might come back. And I have to acknowledge those feelings, and I have to choose to let it go again. I have to choose to forgive that person again.
So it's not a one-time thing for you? Like, it's a continuous thing?
For me, it's continuous. You know, we have to think about, not to go too deep in it, but you have triggers or things that remind you of a certain situation. And a lot of times it comes up in the form of feelings and emotions. And we talk about forgiveness, and a lot of forgiveness has to do with emotions that come up when it comes to that person or that event that happened. And you're human, so you're going to feel those things. And so choosing not to go back down that road of acknowledging that pain and stuff, but choosing not to get angry again, it's a choice. So I'm choosing to acknowledge my pain, but I'm choosing to say, I'm going to forgive today. I'm going to let it go again today. I have these emotions, but I'm choosing to let it go again.
But is that with everything or just certain situations? Because I feel like it's certain things I just let go. I don't even have to, every time I see that person, continuously let it go, let it go. It's like, it's the past, whatever. I just have to move on and release them from that.
I mean, it depends on how deep the situation is. Depending on how deep it goes and how much the pain or the hurt or the disappointment or the betrayal is, then the brain is going to do what it wants to do in a lot of cases. And it's not that you are choosing to continue to hold on to things, but if something triggers a feeling on the inside, being intentional about choosing to release it again and not to hold on to, or not to let it like hold on to you, a part of it is a choice. Yeah, but certainly some things, like somebody do something to me and I forgive, it's gone. But there's other things that I have to work towards until I don't feel that anymore.
So what does it look like then? Like, how do you know when you've completely forgiven somebody? Like, what is the actual action behind the forgiveness? How will you know when you've forgiven?
Well, for me personally, it's when I can think about that person or something can remind me of that personal situation and the pain isn't as great as it used to be. That is how the healing process is. It's like I have a cut on my leg, and yeah, it's gonna hurt if I keep touching it, but over time the pain, it dwindles, and so eventually the hurt, it doesn't hurt anymore. It might be always a scar there to remind you, but the pain is not there. So that's kind of how forgiveness would look for me.
So it's the absence of pain, or it's the absence of hurt.
It's the absence of,
think about the situation, or when you think about that person who hurt you or who did something to you that required the forgiveness in the first place.
Right. There might be sadness because you sometimes are sad that for the loss of the situation or the person, but the negative stuff that caused the toxic stuff to kind of sit inside you, like the hate or the resentment or the betrayal feeling or the feeling of I want to get them back, you know, that type of stuff is gone. That's how it looks.
I think the point where I get to the point where I actually forgive someone is if I feel like, number one, I look at myself and say, you know, I've had to be forgiven for things and I'm not perfect. And so how can I expect that if I'm not willing to give it? And then also looking at how holding on to it is really just causing me more anguish than making me feel better, you know, by holding on to whatever they did. So once I kind of look at it practically, like, well, really, what is this doing for you other than pseudo making you feel better by holding on to this unforgiveness, when in the long run it's taking more energy out of me to hold on to this grudge or this feeling of, you know, no, you did something, so you deserve me not to let you go or let you go free, one injustice. And then looking at myself and saying, you know, what do you get out of that? Practically, too, another way is to release that person from the obligation of an apology, because sometimes you'll never get that. You'll never get the apology, and I think holding on to that keeps you bound in that unforgiveness when you're like, no, they at least need to apologize for what they did.
Yeah.
At the very least.
Yeah.
It's not, they can't correct it or they can't change it and make it right, but at least they need to apologize to me. You might never get that, and that really holds you captive in that situation when you're like, no, they gotta say sorry, they need to show remorse, they need to repent, they need to do all these things.
They need to acknowledge.
I'm not letting it go, because they got to learn. And that's just not the case. So I think practically just looking inwardly and saying, what have I required forgiveness for, grace for, and when have I received it? And also, what is this doing for me? How is this benefiting me in the long run?
I agree with that. When you talk about that need for an apology in the way that you need it in, that's a whole nother topic. But I think, like I said before, they have nothing to do with it.
And I think as we grow up and we mature, forgiveness becomes a little bit easier because you've lived, you learned, you've done things, you make mistakes, you see how people are flawed. You get more practice at it.
Yeah.
At seeing the flaws in people and knowing, that's just the way it is. So I think that makes you better, or you get better when you're able to forgive, when you can understand that it's just a part of life. It's just a fact of life.
Yeah.
And people will hurt you. People will disappoint you. And there's not too much you can do about it other than choose to forgive and move forward and move on when you can't change what's happened. And sometimes you can't salvage the relationship. Sometimes you can't reconcile, but you can choose to forgive.
I agree with that. I mean, I think there's a huge element of like self-love and self-care when choosing to forgive, and not just forgiving, but also letting go of that situation and allow yourself to grieve that situation or that person, however many days or weeks or months or even a year or so. It's really kind of like an act of self-love and self-care also.
Yeah. And speaking of self-love, I think the best way to practice forgiveness is to practice on yourself, forgiving yourself first for the mistakes you make. And for me, that's very easy to do personally. But for some people, I know I've met a lot of people who find it difficult to forgive themselves, who carry a lot of guilt for things that they've done or they haven't done, and they haven't been able to forgive themselves. I'm not one of those people. I usually forgive myself in a heartbeat. Like, you do better tomorrow.
Yeah.
You all right. You try. It's very easy for me to give forgiveness to myself, but it's difficult for me to. It just depends on the situation and the person. Offer the same forgiveness for others that I give to myself. But I think for a person who's just starting on that path of forgiveness, starting with yourself first, and practicing forgiving yourself and acknowledging that you're only human and that you will make mistakes, but it's okay. You may do better in the future. You may not, but it's okay. And for other people, they may do better in the future and they may not.
Yeah.
But that goes with loving yourself and loving other people as you love yourself.
And so, I mean, you bring up a good point. So if I don't have a whole lot of self-love, and if I don't forgive myself easily for things, that is going to be a hard thing for me to do, to forgive others. It starts with yourself. And I'm going to hold people most likely to the same standard that I hold myself to.
You would think that, but I've met people who will very easily forgive other people and won't forgive themselves. So I think it goes both ways. Sometimes it depends on the person. They will give a lot of grace and a lot of leeway to other people that they won't give to themselves. And they're harder on themselves than they are on other people. But then there are people who can't forgive themselves and can't forgive others. So I think it's a mixed bag. I think it's important for all, to start with yourself, then be able to get strong in that way where you can give it away to other people. Fill yourself with it so much that it does kind of overflow into other relationships and other people and other situations and circumstances. But again, I agree with you. It's a continual process. It's not always going to go smoothly. It's not always going to be easy to do because some offenses are extreme. Some offenses are so egregious that it's difficult to forgive a person, and that requires time, patience, sacrifice. It requires a lot of you, but I think in the long run it pays off.
I agree with that.
Yeah, so for today, that's pretty good, on forgiveness. Again, we're going to continue to intertwine that in some other topics and other discussions because it's a part of other situations where you have to get better. But we have a good start on understanding of forgiveness and how we can kind of walk that out every day.
So that looks like our time for today. So remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. You can also send in questions or topics that you want to hear or discuss on the show. So until next time, let's keep getting better so we can do better in order to be better.